Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu are leading us into World War III, and the Biden administration is funding it. Israel's been flouting international law for years, but in the wake of the October 7th attacks, they've become completely unhinged and have now almost fully devolved into a rogue, criminal state. In this video, I'm going to update you on the situation in the Middle East and explain why the actions of Israel and the United States could drag the rest of the region into conflict and ultimately World War III. Before we get going, as usual, make sure to leave us a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. All right, let's get into it. No matter what you think about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the history of the formation of Israel, who was there first, who's entitled to what land according to the Bible or law, the 1967 war, the settlements, Hamas, or anything else related to the problems of that region, that's your business. I'm not here to argue about that because we're way beyond it at this point. I'm talking as an American who loves his country and is tired of his government being controlled by the Israeli lobby and Bibi Netanyahu, who Senator Chuck Schumer just called the greatest threat to peace in the Middle East. Yeah, those are tough words from a guy who's received almost $2 million worth of campaign contributions from the Israel lobby. And by the way, this basically sums up the relationship between our government and Israel. In public, our politicians pretend to get tough with Israel, demanding they protect civilians in Gaza and follow international law, while at the same time giving them billions of dollars in taxpayer money, as well as the very same weapons Israel uses to commit war crimes, including the bombing and killing of an American aid worker last week in Gaza. An American killed with American money and weapons. Am I the only one who's furious about this? But more on that later. Let's look at what Israel is doing and how this could cause the Muslim states in the region to respond and ultimately provoke World War III. First, let's get up to date on the facts. It's important to understand that Bibi Netanyahu is a far right-wing radical who was probably behind the assassination of then Israeli President Yitzhak Rabin back in the 1990s. He's a gangster, and he's retained power longer than almost any other leader in a so-called democratic country. He is fully aligned ideologically with the Jewish settlers who believe they have a divine right to every inch of the land of Palestine. He has been allowing settlers to overtake the West Bank for the last 2 decades and illegally squat and seize Palestinian land. And he's kept his sights on Gaza ever since 2006 when Hamas took over. Furthermore, as we know pretty much for a fact now, Bibi was funding and arming Hamas this whole time. Why would he do such a thing? Well, you could say it was so that Hamas would crack down on any kind of dissent within Gaza and eliminate any rogue terrorist groups that could potentially attack Israel, but most likely it was a divide and conquer move. He wanted Hamas because they are hardliners and radicals, and he knew they would undermine the Palestinian Authority, which is the competing government body pushing for a peaceful two-state solution for Palestinians. Or it could be because he was hoping Hamas would attack Israel this whole time. You see, Bibi is now an incredibly unpopular president within Israel. Before the attacks of October 7th, the entire country was brought to a standstill by protesters demanding that Bibi step down. He was and is trying to take executive and legislative power away from the courts and the Israeli Constitution and give it to the War Council, which is how dictatorships happen. He was probably set to be ousted as prime minister. But since October 7th, the country has reluctantly rallied around him. These attacks were extremely convenient for him, don't you think? This was Bibi's chance to not only maintain a grip on his power in Israel, but to carry out what has been described by his own generals in his war council as the final solution for Gaza, which is to kill or drive every single Palestinian from the land. The whole world can see this. We all know the stats by now. Almost 35,000 killed, 13,000 of these dead are children. Half the country, 1.5 million people, are facing starvation now, disease, so on and so on. It's horrendous. The IDF tells civilians to flee, then bomb the people trying to flee. They have routinely blocked food and aid trucks from entering the safe zones in southern Gaza, and when they finally do allow them through, they blow those up. Most recently, they killed international aid workers working for World Central Kitchen, including an American. This is not an isolated mistake, it's intentional. Since the start of the conflict, an estimated 224 aid workers have been killed. Biden and the White House are finally starting to talk tough to Israel, but they literally do nothing, and in fact continue to send tens of billions of dollars and weapons like 2,000-pound bombs, which no government has used since World War II, like literally anywhere in the world. Bibi and his generals virtually ignore every warning that Biden gives them about protecting civilians and following the international rules of war. And why? Because they can. Because the Israel lobby has bought our government wholesale. In fact, last election cycle, the 51 different Israeli lobbying groups that exist in the US dumped $58 million into re-election campaigns for both sides, Democrats and Republicans. It's wild to think that a tiny country in the Middle East is effectively controlling and dictating the foreign policy of the United States. This is where we are. But, you ask, how is this ethnic cleansing in Gaza going to spark World War III? Well, the first thing you've got to remember is that no governments care about the plight of the Palestinians, not even the Arab countries, despite what they say. Politicians are interested in one thing, and that's remaining in power. It is the citizens of these Arab countries, millions and millions of Muslims in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Turkey, who are so furious as they witness the massacre in Gaza that if their leaders let the slaughter continue much longer, it's entirely possible that these governments will be toppled. They have to do something. Every country is poised, waiting for the funk to jump off. And this is where it gets crazy. Hezbollah, which is of course backed by Iran, has been attacking Israel from southern Lebanon for months and essentially opened up a new front in the war. Now Israel is getting rockets from both sides, Gaza and Lebanon. Now so far it's just been tit for tat, rockets and artillery exchanges back and forth. But if Bibi gets his way, he will soon stage not only a full-on bombing campaign into the heart of Beirut, but launch a ground invasion into Lebanon. He's salivating for it. And if that happens, guess who's gonna step in? Iran. Just last week, an Israeli airstrike bombed the Iranian embassy in Syria, killing scores of people. This is supposed to be off limits, according to the rules of diplomacy and international law. But clearly, Bibi and Israel do not care about law. They are a criminal state. This is what criminal states do. They flout the law. This bombing will surely trigger the Houthi rebels in Yemen to resume ship hijacking in the Red Sea, which will cause the Americans to get involved and possibly strike Iranian targets, either in Iran or its proxies. This right here is the most dangerous situation, in my opinion. If full-on war breaks out between America and Iran, or Israel and Iran, then this will almost assuredly make Russia step in, as they are one of Iran's closest allies and trading partners. Do you see how badly this could turn out? War hawks in the US government like Lindsey Graham, psychopaths, and enormous benefactors of the military-industrial complex have basically been calling for full-on war with Iran, not realizing, or perhaps just not caring, how this could lead to nuclear war with Russia. Even if America and Iran can avoid direct military conflict for now, if Israel continues its assault on Gaza and invades Lebanon, not only will Iran be forced to get involved, and subsequently the Russians, you might see a ground and air attack on Israel from Jordan, Egypt, Syria, and Turkey, all at the same time. Check this out. Turkey is the leader of the Muslim world, and it has the biggest military in the Middle East outside of Israel. President Erdogan, who is a dictator and a bad dude, I'm not saying I'm a fan of any of these theocratic Muslim leaders either, by the way, but he's built up Turkey's army so strong over the generations, including with massive air power, that if they chose to invade Israel tomorrow, the Israelis wouldn't stand a chance. The Israeli economy has already contracted more than 20% since the start of the war on Gaza. And with a second front opened up in Lebanon, they're going to be stretched so thin that an assault by Turkey, with the help from Egypt from the south and Jordan to the east, would cause Israel to crumble. Literally, it could look like Ukraine by the end of it. But if that happens, guess who comes to the rescue? Israel's puppet, the United States. They don't spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying up our politicians for nothing, do they? But this could be the worst case scenario of them all. God forbid if the US went to war against Turkey inside of Israel, this would force the hand of, wait for it, China. Over the years, China and Turkey have developed a trade pact worth hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Turkey has become an extremely important market for Chinese goods, so much so that the Chinese now depend on Turkey for their economic health. They are the second biggest importer of Chinese goods after Russia. Any major disruption to this could send the already unstable Chinese economy into a tailspin. They would be forced to act if the US-Israel alliance went to war with Turkey. And then all bets are off. Every scenario is on the table, including a nuclear one. The smartest people are all saying that the world has never been closer to nuclear war, and the ones with the ability to make it stop? of course, is us, the United States. But just like many other Western societies, our democracy is decaying, and the policies of our government no longer represent the will of the people, if they ever did. Our stupid, childlike, morally corrupt leaders are treating the government like a going out of business sale. Just Google it, it's all there. You can see how almost every single member of Congress has been accepting millions of dollars from AIPAC and the myriad other Israel lobbying groups for years. Israel has the US so much by the balls that the media is scared to even criticize them. Their propaganda is so strong. Anything even remotely critical of Israel's policies is attacked as anti-Semitic. This is binary, childlike thinking, but it has our leaders with their tail between their legs. And of course, Biden is absolutely useless, just like in everything else. It isn't even an exaggeration to say that Bibi Netanyahu has more influence over the foreign policy of our own government than Joe Biden and almost every member of our Congress. It's madness, and it's literally on the brink of pulling the world into what truly could be the war to end all wars. America is already racking up $1 trillion worth of new debt every 3 months to add to the almost $35 trillion that's been accumulated already. We're on the verge of a deep recession and runaway inflation that could lead to a currency crisis. Our armed forces can't even recruit people. Our cities are decaying, and our porous southern border is flooded by millions of illegal migrants every year. I don't even have to mention the cluster in Ukraine. I don't need to. We saw how that turned out. So look at this mess we're in now, and then imagine we go to war in the Middle East. This is how Rome falls. Printing money, unchecked government largesse, and reckless wars abroad. Wake up, people! Vote these cats out! Alright, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Leave us a like and a comment, and we will see you very soon. Take care.